the Airport Advisory Commission. I'd like to come to order. We have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we do a roll call?
Carl, we really didn't have any official minutes for the last meeting because it was just get organized. Is that not correct?
Well, first you need to do roll call. So ask the clerk for roll call.
Okay, can you give us a roll call?
David Anslinger,
Present.
Scott Brackett,
Here.
Michael Finnegan,
Here.
Charles Timothy Gerlach,
Here.
Carl Hayes,
Here?
Gary Rucker,
Here.
John Stutzman.
Here.
We've got a quorum.
Okay, so I don't think we have any minutes really to approve.
Yeah, they're there.
There.
What did we,
Anything you talk about is going to be in your minutes, whether it's substantive or not.
well, we didn't take any hard action on anything. Do I have any discussion on the minutes?
Move we accept.
Second?
Second.
So Dave moved and Gary second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got unanimous on that. So we have a public comment period. If it's something that's on the agenda, we'll probably take comments relating to that item when we get to that. If it's something that's not on the agenda, now is the time. Please make sure you have a slip that's you filled out to speak, so we know who you are and where you came from. But I'll start with the ones that are I have already. John Wilson.
I was hoping to hold that until.
Oh, okay, you're on an agenda item?
Yes.
All right, fine. Eakin?
Yeah, we're on the agenda. They said fill it out in case we needed to speak.
That's fine. Yeah, we want that either way. And Brad Hunt is the same for you?
Boyd, yeah.
Boyd, okay, excuse me. Yeah, Boyd. Okay, so all those are relate to an item. So we have staff reports. Oh yeah, excuse me. I want Gary to introduce a very special guy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce, many of you already know him, Bennett Bradley. Bennett will be joining us next week, and he will be the Economic Development Fellow to oversee the industrial park at the airport. He'll also be assisting me in the websites, design stuff for economic development, plus just the overall stuff in Kingman. But I'm really excited to have Bennett join our Kingman team. We've worked together for probably a good 10, 12, 15 years almost on several projects in the county, and I think it's a real honor to have him with us. And you will see him. Bennett will be housed at the airport, and he'll work very closely with both Joe and whoever his successor is. So with that, I just wanted to take a minute. Bennett, tell him about yourself real quick.
Yeah, thank you. Really looking forward to working with you guys out at the airport. Also, my experience has been economic development. I'm also a broker in the real estate side of things. Been a real estate broker in California and Arizona since 2000, around there. So worked with a lot of different businesses in Mojave County in locating them here over the years, and I look forward to continuing some successful opportunities here working for the city of Kingman. So with that, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bennett.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, lunch has arrived, so we can pass out the sandwiches, or you can just wait till the meeting's over. They're here for you. They told us they'd have them to us early, but they unfortunately did not.
Position.
So whatever your pleasure is.
I'll wait.
Wait? Okay, we'll wait. All right, Joe.
Mr.
Chairman, members of the commission, good to see you today. It's nice to be here. I'm sorry that I missed your first meeting of the advisory commission, but it's my intention to be at all of them for the duration of my tenure here. So I'm going to provide to you a staff report on events at the airport, and this staff report is kind of the standard things that I think that the airport should be reporting to the commission on, as well as some other items that were included as a result of the suggestions we received at the last meeting. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next agenda item, sort of how we want to address, my vision of how we think we'll address those and get ultimately any discussion on those items. But for this item, staff report, first talk to you a little bit about the selection process for the permanent airport general manager. All of the finalist candidates have been submitted by the recruitment firm. There are 2 and possibly 3. We think there's going to be 3 candidates. We are in the process right now of evaluating those finalists. And then the proposal is to schedule a commission and community meet and greet of those candidates. Bring them into town, let all of you meet them, let the public meet them, provide an opportunity to get some scorecards, like community scorecards back on them. And then from that, we'll work towards making a final selection. As you know, the hiring authority for the position is my boss, Mr. Kellogg. And so I'm assisting as well as HR, he as well as HR with that process. So we don't know exactly when that meet and greet is going to be. We think it's going to be in early September. Right now, we've received, as I said, the finalist information. So once we get through that and then actually contact the candidates and look at starting that schedule that process, we look to be somewhere in the first part of September. Questions on that, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission? Next item is airport operational update. So there's aircraft reporting. The based aircraft in the field right now is, forgive me for this, and I like to give specific and precise information, but we're looking at somewhere between 85 and 175 airplanes. Yeah, I'm embarrassed too. So the last reporting that was provided to the Arizona Department of Transportation, according to them, was in 2016. Staff says that they have more recent reports that they actually collect that data from the field. I've seen reports from 85 to about 175. I think it's somewhere in between. I will have more precise numbers for you at the next meeting, but I was unable to provide those for you right now. So it is my apology to the commission for not having a more precise number, but I'm at all times transparent and honest. Stored aircraft, the most recent stored aircraft count was just this past about a week and a half ago. There's 209 stored aircraft on the field. That's large commercial aircraft that are stored there. That we have precision on because, as you know, we bill for those stored aircraft. So we always keep that up to date. Fuel flowage for the month of June, and I'll explain, I know we're in August, but the reporting from our fuel provider isn't due until sometime towards the middle of the month. And so at the time that I put this report together, even today, we haven't got the data for July yet. But for June, we had 37,863 gallons of fuel. The current reporting process only requires a reporting of fuel. I will actually ask for a reporting in the future of both avgas and Jet A, so we know a little bit more precise. But the total accumulation is 37,863. Financial update. Here again, these are accurate figures. These are from the most recent budget report. I receive a budget report once a month for revenue and expenditures, and we're in the process of refining that. So as an example, when I state our expenditures, I've included things that are encumbered for the future. Like if we've issued a PO for a tractor, for example. We haven't actually spent that money yet, but there's a $49,000 PO that's out there. So that's incorporated within these expenses. So as I continue to work with the finance department, which I'd like to tell the commission, Mr. Chairman, the finance department here is most excellent to work with, very precise and very responsive. So that's my little thing for the finance department. They've been outstanding. As we continue to refine that monthly report, we'll get a little bit more categories here. But for right now, what I'd like to share with you is our airport revenues for the month of July were $200,027,952.37. So that's 227,952.37. $227,952.37. That's revenues. Expenditures, including all those encumbered items, was $174,718. So spent $50,000 less than we took in. That's always a good thing. But like I said, that is actually skewed. We actually spent much less than we took in than this reflects. So we'll get more precision as we move through the process of getting those reports coming for you. FAA and ADOT coordination. So we've been working with the FAA. We just this past week had our planning meeting with the FAA and ADOT where we discussed our grant program for the next 5 years, which is an agenda item we'll talk about a little bit more detail later. Part 139, certificate acquisition. We're continuing to revise our airport certification manual and submit that to the FAA once it is fully revised. Inspection and deficiency status. So we had, as many of you are aware, right around the 9th or 10th of May, a surveillance inspection by the FAA Safety and Standards Branch, in which they identified a few deficiencies, and I'll share those with you right now, maybe. So one deficiency was that the certification manual was not where it was supposed to be. We remedied that. It took us a little while to find it, but we have remedied that. There was some edge light bases along taxiway Alpha that had some lips of more than 3 inches, which is outside standard. Those have been that's been completed and mitigated. Center line and threshold markings on runway 32 run were faded. That's in the process. We've received a couple of bids on those. Lead-in lines on runway 321 and 1735 faded. Here again, that's bidding right now with a couple of striping contractors. 2 hole bars were worn and faded. That's hole position markings at the approach end of runway 17 and 35. Those have been repainted, so that's been completed. And then the fuel dispensary permit holder, basically the fuel provider on the field, it's the airport's responsibility under Part 139 to actually inspect on a quarterly basis the fuel dispensing equipment as well as the fuel storage facility. And that process had been delegated to the provider. So the FAA had determined that to be a deficiency. We've corrected that. And now a collaborative effort of both the Kingman Fire Department and NACFED, the Northern Arizona Consolidated Fire District, are performing those inspections. And the first inspection should begin next week. So therefore that item's been remedied. So those are the deficiencies, relatively few for our surveillance inspection, and more than, I think there's only 2 or 3 that are remaining, and those are all in process.
I do have a question on that. Is that inspection substantially different than the fuel provider, or is this something they're working, you come out and everybody does it at the same time?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard process where we're looking at signage and placarding, Mr. Chairman, as well as leaks and conditions and those kinds of things. So, I mean, what's going to be looked at, I can't say with absolute explicitity about what was being looked at before, but I'm not seeing any major concerns or deficiencies just in our inspection of the equipment. That answer your question, Mr. Chairman? ADOT grant program is coming back. So for the last several years, the ADOT grant program, their state and local grant program, had been suspended due to some funding challenges. Starting, I believe it's in fiscal year 20, that program comes back. So we've identified the items within our capital improvement program that are going to be placed within that ADOT grant program. But that's good news for all airports. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, any questions of the FAA and ADOT certification process? Coordination? No? Airport development. The draw site, everybody wants to know about that. And I actually have been getting weekly updates from Haley and Aldrich, which is the engineering company that is working kind of on our behalf, but they work directly with, and I'll say with and for, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cooper, the United States Department of Justice, who's the funding arm, or actually the regulatory are my guess in this process. So phase 2 for additional core drilling of the draw site has been submitted. The work plan and change order has been submitted to the Department of Justice. It's been probably 4 to 6 weeks since that's been submitted, and there's still no word back from them. Once they accept that change order and work plan, then Haley and Aldrich is committed to start getting the work done right away. They think it'll take something around a month to do. From that further data, they will, that more detailed data over and above what they had previously done, the core drilling that they've done on a more limited scale. From that enhanced data that they'll receive, they will design the repair, if you will, the mitigation. And so we're still in phase 2. We're still waiting for them to do their additional core drilling. So I think what I would like to suggest is that at a future meeting, we actually have a presentation on this item. I would suggest that to the commission. It's certainly your decision, where we may get some of the law firm that represents the city in the process, as well as Haley and Aldrich to come in and talk about what the process is.
You can't get the Department of Justice, huh?
Well, you can ask. You know, I always like to stay about 3 steps ahead of the FBI anyway. But anyway, that's a joke. My humor gets me in trouble frequently. It's Cooper's responsibility.
I'm here to take care of you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I get to stay out of prison at least one more day. So, draw site. Runway, we're doing some crack seal work on the runway. The runway's in relatively good shape. That's runway 321, but it does need some crack seal. And that was stipulated and identified in our pavement maintenance management plan that was done, that we received several months ago. So I've had 2 contractors come out and look at the work, and I've got pricing from one, I'm waiting to get pricing from another, and then one more bid. So I want to get the crack seal done before I do the striping, of course, because it's like saw cutting a new street, which is never a good idea. So that's where we are on that. I do have 3 contractors giving us striping prices, and I've got 1 bid back from them. The apron area, the parking apron area, we're going to do some seal coating on. These are the 2 projects that were included in our capital operating budget, capital projects for this year. So the seal coating, I've had 1 company look at that, and I need to get a couple more to come out, but the 1 company that I have actually engaged is the job order contractor that's actually under contract to the city of Kingman. If we're able to get a competitive and reasonable bid from them through that process, it's far streamlined, because that job order contract has been competitively bid already in accordance with ARS Title 34, so we can go straight to them and give them a task order. They've also looked at some work at the gates to do some paving around the gate, the airport gate areas, where we have some unpaved areas adjacent to the main taxi lanes that go through there. And then the terminal project is underway. We're having that looked at and designed by the architect. I've not received any information on that at this point.
Joe, am I correct that all of those items are airport funds? There's no grants involved?
Correct. Yeah, these are all our own budget, yeah. This year's ADOT grant, and I probably should have put this on here, is for our master plan update. We've received that grant, and it's been executed by the city and is back in the hands of the FAA. So essentially, we are free to issue a notice to proceed to the contractor that's doing the master plan update grant, and that should get started. So that final grant paperwork was signed last week and submitted to the FAA, emailed on Friday and posted also on Friday. Okay, hangar occupancy was one of the things that you commission had asked to receive information on. So right now, for executive hangars, we have 5 of them that are rented by the city, and those are all full. T hangars, there are a total of 39, and 36 of them are currently full. So we have 3 vacancies in our T hangars, 1 of them in the newer rows, and 2 of them in row D. We have 10 covered tie-downs, and they're all currently completely occupied, no vacancies. And for wait list, we have 2 on the executive hangar wait list. We have 2 on the T hangar wait list. And one of those, I don't think they want to move into the D hangars, so we'll be getting, should be getting one of those into the other hangars soon. And then we have 4 on the cover tie-down wait list.
Have you run any ads at all on these yet?
Not to my, yeah, we have not. And traditionally, if you have a wait list, I don't know that you need to advertise, but we certainly can. If it's
Maybe premature, but I would suspect we need to get some indication of what the owners outside of Kingman have in the way of interest in being here.
good, yeah. Especially it would help us gauge whether there's more demand that we don't currently don't
Something
have.
like General Aviation News where there's, it's pretty widespread, but it's a target market. We don't have Pacific Flyer anymore, I don't know. There may be some, Controller is probably too high end.
Okay, we will look at that. On that item, airport leasing and development, we've been approached by 3 different persons who would like to, one of them would like to build a 6,400 square foot hangar. And we're working with them. They're pretty serious. We're actually identifying the site, and then the next step will actually be to submit a NEPA clearance, because it will make a change to our ALP. So we actually have to submit a categorical exclusion request to the FAA to allow us to build. Anything that changes your airport layout plan or anything that you use federal funds for, we're not using federal funds in this case, but it'll make a change to the airport layout plan, has to go through a NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act clearance process. Now, it's a very basic clearance process at their lowest level, what they call categorical exclusion, but it does have to occur. The other person who's approached us to build a hangar is a 3,600 square foot hangar, is in the area where we already have the 60 by 60 hangars. And those are already actually shown on our ALP, so that will not require NEPA approval, because they were identified in that location in our last master plan.
You're talking the back row where the executive hangars are?
Affirmative, sir.
I think that he wants 60 by 60, I think those are 40 by 50.
Well, and I may be in error on the exact size because he hasn't returned my phone call. I took a speculative leap on that. I did call the individual back, but I haven't heard anything back from him.
Give me a call on that, because some of the utility stuff is already in place, and, that might help
Sure, yeah.
move him along.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then another has been proposed as kind of a pull-through, larger aircraft shaded parking area that would be used it would be exclusively built and used by this individual. We don't know exactly a site location yet, but the idea is if they were in town for a day doing business, they could pull in, park the aircraft in the shade, and then pull back out and taxi out when they're done. So we're looking into that. That would also probably require NEPA approval, because we don't even know exactly where we do it yet. But that's one of the items that we're talking about. So those are the 3 new development processes that we have going. We've also been approached to do some other airport business and commercial activity. One of the companies, there's been 2 companies approach us that would like to come in and do some temporary aircraft teardown of aircraft that are currently stored at Kingman. We have created a license agreement that is being reviewed right now internally by the city, and then it would be for up to 3 months for a temporary process. So they would come in and provide to us, insurance information and deposit, and sign the license agreement, and then they'd be able to actually conduct their operation for up to 3 months. And we possibly would consider a small extension on that, but our belief is if people want to come in and do that kind of business, they need to make a capital improvement at the airport and come in and actually develop a location that they could do that on, because it's difficult to do it on a temporary basis.
They're talking about actually building a building?
Negative. All they want is Mr. Chairman, they would like to have just an area, probably in the vicinity of 100 or 125 feet by 200 or 250 feet of ramp, where they could do the tear down of the aircraft.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. Let's see, we've also been approached by crop dusting. So we're working on a commercial use agreement for both crop dusting and banner towing. So it's just some of the folks that have been calling on us to conduct some commercial activities here at the airport. Okay. Airport Open House, as many of you are aware, the Kingman Air Fest is scheduled for 6 October 2018. It's sponsored and coordinated by the local Experimental Aircraft Association chapter. I would think that there may be some benefit to have a informational presentation at a future meeting, although it would have to be probably in September. So that's just something to consider, that we could provide some more detailed information on the Kingman Air Fest. We have an internal meeting with city staff and the organization that is putting the fest together, and that's, I believe it's this Friday or next Friday. I have to look at my calendar, but that's coming up soon. And then I'm reaching out to tourism to talk about special events in general and how the city actually procures some of the things that they provide for special events, because we have agreed, the airport has agreed to provide some of the items for in support of the Air Fest that's coming up. Okay, land use and proposed. The last two items that are on here, it's something that I've traditionally reported on in the past. The airport likes to keep track of things that are being developed at the airport, or around the airport, I should say, for land use compatibility issues. So I need to still reach out to the county planning and zoning group and make sure we get on their list so that we're receiving things that are being developed within 5 miles of the airport. So at this time, there's been no zoning cases reviewed, but that's something I look to ensure that we do in the future. And then there have been no airport noise complaints at the airport that have risen to my level of attention, none that I'm aware of, since I've been there on 4 May.
This will last 30 days or period?
Pardon?
Last 30 days or since you got here?
Since I got here on 4 May, my first day. So Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, is my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Joe, buddy, I think you better sit down. You're looking a little pale.
I'm sorry?
You're looking a little pale, Joe.
Yeah.
Maybe you better sit down and cool off. I'm worried about you, seriously.
I'm sure somebody's CPR certified. I promise not to fall out. Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your concern,
All
Mr.
right.
Commissioner. So the next item.
I had a question regarding
Sorry.
one of the items. The private shade area that you had mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Prospectively, is there any idea what the size of that would be?
Not entirely, but I'm assuming that it's probably going to be something on the order of possibly a 40 by 60 or 30 by 60 or something like that, but we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Commissioner.
And I have a question. On that airport noise complaints, do you know if the real estate people have in their contracts when they're selling houses around the area, you know how they advise people of adverse things, if that's in all of those contracts or a plan to put them in the contracts?
It is a state law that anyone within, we have a noise disclosure area map. All airports in the state do. And so any residential, any residential that falls within that area, it's a requirement by the state real estate board that disclosure is made. Now, unfortunately, that disclosure too oftentimes is in the 8 million pieces of paper that you sign when you're, doing your title.
Right.
But it is a state requirement.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So proposed staff report items. The first thing I would say is that I think in the future we should have my counterpart, which you met Bennett Brantley earlier today, to provide us with an update on what's going on in the industrial park. The industrial park is a linked component of the airport, and so that I would propose that, and certainly we would defer to your desires on that. And then I wanted to go through the 2 items that I received and take some notes on proposed reporting in the future. So as an example, Commissioner Barackett had submitted suggestions for future agenda items, as well as Commissioner Rucker. And so the questionnaire we think is a wonderful idea, and would be happy to do that, and we'll start working on that at some point in the not too distant future. And then of course we report on what those results were. List of names for FAA contacts, I'll be happy to provide that to the commission. And then I'll submit what I think is the wise you know, the things that would be of most interest, because there's a whole lot of contacts, and then if there are other suggestions, we'd be happy to submit those. Sweeping, or it just says facility schedule. So I don't know exactly how we provide reporting on that, but we could potentially get some more information for you and determine what we would provide and what you would desire. Tools and aids, visual, one of the things that came up, actually Commissioner Brackett said it would be handy to have the master plan available, which I don't disagree with whatsoever. It's a little more challenging. We have all of those documents and things at the airport, but we'll make sure that we get access to the master plan and the ALP that will be available here. I don't know exactly the process, but we'll investigate that. And then any suggestions you have for other visual aids that you'd like to see, please share those with us. Standardized reporting on fuel flowage, tie-down occupancy, hangars, large aircraft count, complaints and suggestion. That's, I think I've covered most of that in our standard report, and we'll continue to add to that from time to time. And then FAA inspection reports, expectations or deficiencies, we've covered that. Marketing expectations at IGM, I think that's something that will be, we're in the process of developing those right now, but we also look forward to some policy guidance and advisory, advice from the commission on where we might reach out to that. Some of those items actually were submitted in Commissioner Rucker's suggestions, which I'll get to in just a minute. And then that was on that. And then for Commissioner Rucker's list, financial status, I think we've covered that. Immediate obligations, I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for on that, but we'll take that and I'll get some guidance from Commissioner Rucker offline. A marketing campaign, some specific ideas about how we could market and promote the airport. Hangar and ramp availability, I think I've covered that already. Kingman Airline Services, I don't know exactly what we're looking for in that regard too, but here again, we'll get some additional guidance. And then as far as land valuations and lease terms, that's something that we're going to be looking to also get some advisory input and perhaps some policy guidance on as we continue to develop those. Right now, we're kind of going, as far as land valuations of what has previously been for the last several leases, what has previously been used. We actually think that it would be wise to do some regular, periodic, either market research or evaluation appraisal of the airport. And so we'll actually be coming to the commission to get some advice on that as we move forward. And then the website and capital investments, partnering with developers. So these are the items that have been submitted to us. At any time, you can contact me if there's something that you would like to see discussed at the advisory commission. And of course, as long as it's within the open public meeting law requirements, we'll certainly put that on. But I just wanted to kind of explain, I wanted you to know that we had received your suggestions. We believe we incorporated some, and we have a plan to continue incorporating the rest of them.
I have one comment.
Yes.
Website. When can we expect something?
Well, we have a web page that has actually been created and is up on the City of Kingman's website currently. And it is brief, and I don't have an actual suggestion or a timeline on when they expect to have a website up, but I will get that for you.
Joe, can I jump on that too? If you want to look at an example that I think is very relevant to us demographically and what we do out here, would be Roswell, New Mexico.
Okay.
They have an excellent interface between their airport and the city of Roswell.
Thank you very much.
Some really good stuff there.
I will point our technology department in that direction,
Okay.
Mr. Commissioner. Okay. So, are any questions about that agenda item, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission? Okay,
Thank you very, very much.
It's my pleasure. And like I said, at any time that you require additional information, you can always contact me directly, individually. Usually you'll see that anytime I send something out to the commissioners, there'll be a big red paragraph on it that says, please do not reply to all. That's just in keeping with the open public meeting law. But there's no reason that the commission, any commissioner cannot, seek information from the airport. So that's my spiel.
You want to move right into the next one and give us some information on that? I can make one comment first when we get ready on that. At our last meeting, I talked about getting all of the legal requirements that we have to comply with from the federal and state contracts and so on. And I got up to about 3 inches. I decided this is not a book everybody wants to put on their desk. And I just talked to Carl Cooper about it. And the FAA has condensed an awful lot of this stuff that is federal. And he's going to get this for us so we can have this, and it summarizes it. We'll have the actual original document site where you can obtain that if there's some question about what do the legal words actually mean. So I was hoping to have some of that today, but it turned out to be a much, much bigger job than I thought. I have
And that kind of ties into the proposed staff report with the website issue. So we might be able to have a section on the website that will have a lot of those legal documents that, like I say, instead of a stack of 2 foot tall, all these trees we're killing, you can just jump over to those sites and check them out. Some of it definitely will be handy to have copies of, but I think some will be good just to know where to find it.
others get that same information just like we do.
Exactly.
There's
So it's all public
horse's
and-
mouth. So
exactly.
I totally concur with, that's the best place to have that is on the website. Most people will get bored, but if somebody really wants to know, it's there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. The next item is the remote control aircraft operation site, and Joel, fill us in on.
I think we're on item 4A, airport capital improvement plan.
He's already covered that, did you not?
Yeah, but I'm going to cover it in just slightly more detail.
Okay,
Very
cool.
little. And actually, this item is on the agenda for both discussion and action.
Okay.
Proposed action. So this is the airport capital improvement plan. It is exactly as I submitted it to you prior to the last meeting. The difference is we've actually met now with the FAA and ADOT. They've generally speaking accepted. Now, I want to clearly state, just because an item is on this 5-year plan, certainly does not mean that we're going to do that project, and it doesn't mean that the funding will be available through either FAA or ADOT. But this gives the airport and the grant agencies, the FAA and ADOT, the opportunity to plan for a 5-year planning horizon. This is very valuable to all of us. So generally speaking, and I will also say that there are multiple projects under each program year, and those are prioritized. And the reason that I always like to, when I develop an airport capital improvement plan, I like there to be some redundancy. So if a project for some reason falls out and you're not able to do it, you have the ability to fall back on a second project, a second priority project. Or if additional funding should become available from the FAA or ADOT late in the program year, for example, you have the ability then to potentially take advantage of that capacity. So it's not expected that every one of these projects would be done every year, but it at least gives the opportunity for all of us to plan. The highest priority projects are listed at the top. So as an example, and then some of these, for example, are in the federal program and others are in the state program. The runway 321 mill and overlay, taxiway B design for the reconstruction of taxiway B, transit apron mill and overlay in fiscal year 2021, design and construction, upgrading the airfield access control system and gate improvements. That's actually in the state grant program. This construct the draw site asphalt overlay. We placed a placeholder in here because while that is being funded by the federal government, they have stated that their intention is to only replace 2 inches of asphalt, and that's not sufficient for the type of aircraft activity we have. So there's the possibility that we may have to go back and add that additional 2 inches to get to a 4-inch lift of asphalt. We're still pushing towards trying to get them to make us whole, but this is a placeholder just in case. Then we had designed taxiway Bravo earlier. Now we're into taxiway Bravo construction in fiscal year 2022. Construct an aircraft wash rack and maintenance bays. That's also in the state program. And then we're going to look at doing the environmental clearance process for a new terminal. And that will be an EA, environmental assessment. So as I mentioned earlier, there's sort of three levels. Categorical exclusion is the simplest and easy. It's basically those items that are widely recognized as what we might call routine, that there's not a lot of environmental study that needs to be done. When you're building new or significantly expanded facilities, there's additional environmental clearance that needs to be done. And so the next step up from categorical exclusion is environmental assessment. Environmental assessments require public outreach. They typically take 6 to 12 years. Excuse me, months, 6 to 12 months.
Hasn't got there yet.
Wait till I tell you about the next one. 6 to 12 months. They can go a little longer than that. Sometimes they can even be shorter than that if it's a fairly straightforward and easy process. The final step is what's called an environmental impact statement, an EIS. And those typically require anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and I've seen them go on to 5 years. And those are very significant. Now, there's nothing that we're doing at the airport that's going to rise to that level. I just share with you that those are the three levels of the environmental clearances. So anyway, back to the fiscal year 2022, the EA for the new terminal. We think that an EA will be required. We're not sure. Actually, the FAA in our meeting said for new terminals that aren't significantly changing in the footprint or the area may not require an EA. So we'll have more on that as we move forward. And then the EA for corner apron, again, that may not be required to do an EA. There was concern that because of the corner apron and the fact that there had been some contamination there in the past, that it might require some additional environmental improvement. But we're thinking not. So we're working with the FAA. It was very valuable having the FAA's environmental planner at our meeting this last week. Designing the airport terminal, and then that's in 2023, and then in 2024, replace the airfield lighting and nav aids, and then reconstruct the corner apron. So those are the projects that we put forward, a total of almost $20 million worth of projects. There was no issues expressed on this from the FAA or ADOT. The only thing that I need to change from what I had already submitted you is some dimensions. As an example, the mill and overlay of runway 321, they like some dimensions on that. It's 150 feet wide by 6,800 feet long. So I need to put those in there. But other than that, they're good to go. The next step for us is actually to upload this to the website, and then it becomes part of our, it gets published, and it's the official document as agreed to by all parties. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I submit this to you, and we suggest or recommend the approval of the ADOT, or of the ASIP for moving forward. Happy to answer any questions you might have, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? I have one question. We had, and I think it goes back to the previous master plan, and I don't know that it was a requirement, but a recommendation from the FAA that we buy some land on the north end of 1735 to extend, I won't use the word clear zone, but certainly they won't build a 5-story building out there. And I have seen that as it's been proposed at times. I believe they may have even applied for a grant at one year. Do you remember, Scott?
They purchased it.
Oh, it was purchased?
Yeah, we purchased it from the state.
They never changed the fence, so, okay, we just own the land then.
Perfect.
So, sorry, didn't
No,
know about that one.
I didn't know. I'm glad we have Commissioner Brackett here, as well as many of you in your historical perspective that you bring to
It's terrible, yes. Any other questions?
No.
Right, we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we submit the ACIP to the state.
I second that motion.
Got a second on both of those, Sandy? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay. Now, new business, remote control aircraft operations site.
So, when I came to the airport, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I was contacted by a couple of different folks asking about the airport site, this remote control airport site. You can see in the photograph, you can sort of see where the into the runway is, which is in this vicinity here. Okay, we have the remote control airport site that's over here. It's a site for remote control aircraft operations. It's been in existence for over 20 years. You know, I'm reading to you from the slide, which I don't normally do. All the improvements that were made there were made by the club, the users, the local Aircraft Modelers Association chapter. When I went to research the file, what I found was a stack of insurance certificates and a couple of club charters from AMA Kingman Aircraft Modelers 969, and nothing else in the file. I've since been provided with some information where previously some elements of the folks that use that had sought to try to get a lease agreement of some kind, or some kind of an operating agreement. I have a letter here dated last February between Mr. Wilson and Mr. Riley of the Airport Authority, talking about the process for getting a lease of the area. My understanding is this has been going on back to the days of the Mojave County Airport Authority. So when Kingman Airport Authority actually took over the operation of the airport under contract to the city, this facility was already in place. And it's been going along as a, basically a verbal agreement, a kind of an undocumented understanding all these years. There have been a number of improvements that have been made to the site. Looking a little closer, that's a little bit close up. So that area is fenced in, it's gated, and it's locked. It's approximately 720,000 square feet within that fence. Pavement on the runway, you know, it's a very nice facility. And it's used on a fairly regular basis, at least monthly. So there was some, I was approached by originally, let me say that there's been some degree of falling out between some of the users. And there's another organization, and so I personally don't want to expound much on that or even get into that. My issue is that we've got two factions out there. Some of them are no longer affiliated with 969, and there's another club. And so they're talking to us about who should be allowed to use the club. Here again, I don't want to police that. What I want to do is have an agreement in place that gives somebody the authority to decide who uses it based on rules, regulations, and operating procedures that the airport has agreed to. And like I said, we currently don't have any kind of arrangement other than sort of a word of mouth. No written documentation as far as the authorization to use that, the ability to make improvements on the site, and there's no rent being paid on the site for 20 years. As an example, $720,000 at our current rate of 30 cents a square foot is something on the order of $200,000 a year that this area of land would potentially be rented by the airport, leased by the airport. Now, when the discussion was had last February between Mr. Riley and Mr. Wilson, Mr. Riley did cite that the last appraisal completed valued the land at 20 cents a square foot. The bottom line is, and I come to you, I make this report to you today purely for discussion and informational purposes. We're not asking for any action at this time, but what we do believe, we'd like to get some policy guidance from the commission in the future on how staff should move forward on this. But I have made notification to the FAA that this is something that's on site, that it's something that's not that there's no written agreement on, and it's something we're not receiving any revenue from. Because that's, I believe, my role. Here again, I mentioned that I'm always honest and transparent. And I was kind of shocked when I discovered this. So there you have the information that I've acquired up to this point. And there's some additional, since I've started looking into it, I have been able to acquire some additional information from the various users out there. But I leave it at that right now. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, just saying, in the future, we'd like to come back to you and have some further discussion on direction on how you think staff ought to proceed, what our policy ought to be on this. There are provisions within the FAA's regulations on rates and charges that allow certain activities, if you will, certain entities to actually receive reduced rent. It has to do more with, like the Civil Air Patrol. They're specifically cited in the regulations. But there's others, if it's mostly the Civil Air Patrol and educational. So if a case can be made that there's an educational component here, there's the possibility of providing some reduction of our rent. So I just share that with you for future digestion as well. So that's kind of where we are. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and then I know there are some of our citizens here that are here to speak on this agenda item.
Questions for Phil?
Are there regulations, or is there like a national organization of aircraft modelers that publish or put out a list of guidelines? Or I believe they're not supposed to fly higher than 400 feet. None of the modelers, I don't think, have altimeters in their aircraft. So I don't know how they measure 400 feet above ground. But I'm sure there's some other guidelines or maybe even restrictions. Would it be possible to get a copy of those regulations or safety requirements, things like that?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Amspoker, absolutely. I have right here in my hand the Academy of Model Aeronautics Safety Handbook, which is published by the AMA. And there are standard procedures, standard guidelines for operation of remote control aircraft. Not necessarily on an airport or off. These are just the basic rules. And I also think it's important to say that, to my knowledge, and of course I've only been there a few months, but all of the research that I've been able to do indicates there have not been any problems or mishaps. And I do believe, speaking directly, Commissioner Amspoker, to the altimeter, I think many of the model aircraft today actually do have some degree. I know a lot of the drones have actually a readout that give you an AGL on there. So yes, I would be happy to provide that to you. Make a note.
Is the club that's there now part of the AMA? Or is it, do they have like chapters like the EAA?
They've absolutely, Mr. Chairman. The local club that we have been dealing with for all these 20 years has been the Kingman Aircraft Modelers, Chapter 969 of the American Modelers Association. And I have in the file their charter, as well as they're actually, the insurance that they provide us is actually through an AMA master umbrella policy, similar to what the EAA does in other organizations. So the answer is yes. I have since started having the discussion, also received a charter and certificate of insurance from the other organization, which is the Golden Eagles RC Club. And I don't remember precisely what their chapter number is, but like I said, subsequent to beginning looking at this process, I got the charter from the other group as well.
I'm just curious, it seems to me in this day and age that somebody has to be responsible for any kind of an area that there's some sort of operations taking place. And if it's not for the city to actually administrate the area or monitor the area, then I would think a particular entity, say the AMA chapter, would have to do so. And if there were two groups trying to do the same thing, would that complicate matters as far as who's responsible for the operation of the area?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Gerlach, yes, absolutely. As I said, everything that I had in the file pointed to the original Modelers Club. And so the way I see it, because we're trying to, we haven't immediately said, okay, close the gate, lock it up, no more using until we figure out what to do. Because we do recognize that there's been an ongoing 20-year relationship and no significant issues, or no issues that I'm aware of at all. Okay, so having said that, my approach was, okay, these are the folks that have been, we'll call them responsible, even though I don't have a written agreement or any guidelines. These are the folks that have been in that location for all this time, so we're allowing them to continue. And so I look upon them as being our point of contact, if you will, our responsible party for dealing with. Not everyone sees it that way in the two groups, but that's sort of having no other guidance and no other clear policy to follow. That's sort of the direction that I've taken until such time as I could bring it to the commission. And that's your question, Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you, and I think that's a very reasonable approach.
I'm curious, do these groups receive any funds themselves that would even give them the ability to pay for this? Because I know that I've had some of this radio control stuff, and every dime I had went into that, didn't give me ability to pay for much else.
Yeah, I have expensive hobbies too. Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Finnegan, I can't speak to that. I know they have a due structure, but how they get their money, I'm unaware, and whether they have any. Although I will say that in the letter that Mr. Riley, formerly of the authority, had submitted to Mr. Wilson, the Golden Eagles, he did clearly state that that was one of the items that is part and parcel to our lease application process, is a declaration of financial responsibility of the organization that we're getting ready to deal with.
Thank you.
Are both of these organizations wanting to use the same facility? Or do you know?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Anspoker, I do believe yes. I mean, that's been what, there's no other facility on the field, and so my assumption is yes, that they believe that an equitable arrangement ought to be worked out to allow everyone to use it.
Are they both members of the AMA?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Anspoker, yes, I have received, as I said subsequently, a charter and insurance from the second group, the other entity. So the answer would be yes.
It's your fault.
I believe.
Thank you.
Your questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Commissioner, so look for this on future agendas, where we'll try to bring you a little bit more detailed information and maybe something suggesting how staff believes that we ought to proceed. So with that, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Thank you. I have 3 requests to speak. Are there any more? Hey, Joe Wilson.
I believe that's John, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, excuse me.
I push this?
No, there's no time limit.
Thank you, Joe. The Kingman modelers have indeed contributed to building that field. There was a time in the past when there were 2 clubs flying there. There are now 3 clubs in town. And I will get into the mud here just a smidge. I was handed this brochure when I came in. Claims the modelers are proud of the fact they've spawned to 2 separate clubs. Both those separate clubs are a direct result of mismanaged attrition. They were all modeler members. Golden Eagles were all modeler members till last November. We went to the airport beginning last June, spoke with them about a direction toward public education. We're told that if we could involve ourselves in the school, that a reduced lease might be able to be negotiated. As of November, a circumstance occurred which required we became a different club. We do have emails confirming that 2 clubs should operate out there because those 2 clubs paid for what's there, and that they were going different directions. One was going toward public education, the other was a private club. The Golden Eagles is not a private club. It's an open club to everybody. There's no vote-in membership. Part of the problem with the vote-in membership is if there's one vote against an individual, it begins a clique. So the whole theory behind the Golden Eagles is to be an education process. I have a drone right over there. It weighs just slightly more than 8.8 ounces. Walmart in town, there were $1.3 billion worth of drones sold last year in the United States. This drone is right at the point, weight-wise, 8.8 ounces, whereby you need a federal registration to fly it. That's not known to everybody. That's part of the responsibility we've taken, educating the community to those purposes. We've enrolled 10 businesses to support us financially and physically with equipment. And we've grown to be the largest club since last November. And yes, we did intend to share that field. We did also agree that if we executed a lease on it, other clubs would be allowed to fly there. It's not a closeout. We, on the other hand, have been locked out of the field, physically locked out. The field was closed at one point because Mr. Riley came down to intervene when the Golden Eagles were locked out. So all I've got to express today is that this is an ongoing discussion and that public property ought to probably be used to make money or for public purposes. And we believe the Golden Eagles represent that public purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Boyd Hunt?
He said it. I didn't say it.
Some Aiken?
Sam,
Sam?
can I give you guys,
Sure.
handouts?
Sure, sure.
Make sure the clerk has one for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have enough for the clerk?
Thank you.
I'm Sam Aiken, the current president of the Kingman Modelers, AMA 969. We've had the field for 26 years there, where it is. We've had an impeccable safety record. We're very keen on safety. We are very keen on being sure that whoever has it, whether it's the city or it was the KAA, that they were named on the insurance and everybody was covered. Sure, that was really important, is that they be covered. We have done a lot of outreach with the community. We have done the air shows in the past. We're going to be doing this fly-in. We have had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts out there. But we have had a lock gate to keep people from just going out there and destroying stuff. Being able to control who has access is key for the insurance too. We are only, if you come out there and you want to fly a RC aircraft, we can have you out there. It's not a problem with our insurance, but you have to be accompanied by a club member. Is there any questions that you guys have for me?
I don't believe we can at this point, can we?
You can ask questions during this section. This is a topic for discussion back and forth, so if they're making a presentation.
Yeah, Sam, the question I have, the picture of the world-class flying field, where is that? What is it?
Which one?
This Golden Eagles built their own world-class flying field, are now living their dream of racing warbirds. Where's that?
That is right across from Cantac across Route 66. There by just west of Route 66.
Past the fiberglass.
Okay, and this is the actual picture?
That's an actual picture there.
Oh, is that, wow,
Really
they
nice.
paid for all that themselves?
Yes, actually, Mr. Wilson put up most of the money for that. He did a damn good job.
Is the runway, is it like a mat of some sort?
It's the same runway that's at the Kingman Airport, and it's a temporary lease from a landowner over there. It's strictly temporary.
It's pretty impressive.
Well, I don't know if it's impressive, it was necessary.
It's a fiber, like a weave, and then it's, geotextile that's laid down really nice.
I was hoping you had the holy grail on asphalt for runways and you could tell Joe on it.
Mr. Chairman, can we just have one person talking at a time so the clerks can keep track of who's talking? Sorry, gentlemen.
You have more?
That's all I got. Mr. Buckner here knows about the two clubs, if you guys have any questions about the two clubs that did fly off the field at one point in time.
I have a question. Are there any jets flying out there now?
Right, yes.
Pure jet.
We do have jets.
How many of those do you have, do you know?
Two jets,
Thank you.
two. And the jet pilots have to have special jet waivers from the AMA, and you can only fly jets with the waiver. And we have two people that are jet waivered, and that takes special training and.
Thank you.
Can anybody join this? He mentioned that it was a private club. And what makes it private?
I guess because we have a locked gate. We've had,
Well, for security for your own equipment, I think you can
Yeah.
justify a lock, but
yeah,
But you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that any club member could go out there and fly?
yes,
They just couldn't bring somebody who was not a club member unless they were there with them?
yes, they can bring someone who's not a club member with them, but they have to be accompanied, the non-club member has to be accompanied by a club member per the insurance.
And what are the requirements to be a club member?
Join the club, pay dues.
Do you have limits on airplanes or
No.
people or
No,
days of the week you fly or anything?
no,
Chairman, can we talk again?
I think you're just doing a little bit of fact-finding right now. You might not want to end up with an entire discussion, and my advice is not to bring anybody back up.
Yes, I'm sorry, better choice. Any more questions for Sam?
I'm curious, Mr. Amspoker talked about some of the regulations, altitudes, that sort of thing, and I understand we can read that, but just for the sake of discussion right now, what is your maximum operating altitude for that field?
as per the FAA, 400 feet. And that is community guidelines also by the AMA, which is also in their rules. So we have to fly under FAA rules and AMA rules. All the aircraft have to have the FAA Part 336, which is the hobbyist number. They actually have to apply and get a hobbyist number on their aircraft, so all their aircraft are marked where they can be seen. And that's an FAA rule. They also have to have their AMA number on their aircraft. So, you know, basically the planes are double marked, so you know who they are.
And are you aware of any other airfields either nearby or even elsewhere that more than one club actively uses the same facility?
No, not necessarily, no.
That's all I have at this moment.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Appreciate your
thank you.
input. And next topic is term of members. I guess we can have a drawing, or if somebody wants to volunteer, get a sheet right this time.
Mr. Chairman, there was a discussion at the last meeting where we weren't quite clear on what those terms even looked like. Are we discussing that at this time?
I believe, wasn't it, we were 2 years, is that not correct?
I think the terms were 3 years, and I unfortunately do not have the ordinance in front of me to tell you what the breakdown was, but I think you're looking at 3 going till 2020, and then 4, was it 4 going to 2020?
4 and 3, either way, 4.
Right, oh, okay. I couldn't remember if it was broken down, but it's going to 2020, then 2021, I guess. So, 2022? I'm terrible at math. And like I say, unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me.
So how many year term?
Here's the 3-year term.
3-year term.
So you're going to have 3, I guess, as Gary said, or 4, your choice of expiring in December 31st of 2020. So that went from 2022. So, and the other ones would expire in 21. That's 3 years. Again, I went to law school, not math.
So nobody is, and that's when a new council would take over typically, so we're not going to have anybody.
So what would happen is when say like you pick 3 to expire in 2020, whichever 3, their terms would technically expire, the council could choose to reappoint them
Sure.
for another 3-year term or pick somebody else. So
Will we have a new council coming up?
at that point, yeah, there'll be a new council in 2020, correct? But it wouldn't affect anything this year. Nothing happens this year. This year doesn't matter.
Okay.
You guys are good until 2020 and 2021,
All right, with that,
unless you quit.
Okay, I volunteer for 2020.
I volunteer for 2020 also.
And same here.
So that gives you your 3.
That's 3, right?
So we have 3. We need to draw for one more.
You can do 3. You can do 3 at
Is
2020.
enough?
Yeah.
So we're going to change it to 4 and 3.
You good with that, Gary? Okay.
All right. So if you could put that in a little schedule in the minutes so everybody
Okay. I most certainly
understands.
can.
I think we decided it, but that's, if there's a problem, we can correct it at the minutes next time.
Thank you.
Okay, any announcements by any commissioners on events or conferences or agenda items? Well, we've already covered that. You can cover that in. There is a bit of a question on who should be contacted for an agenda item. Should we contact Sandy Flowers or me personally, and I contact her? How?
Yeah, it's probably best to go through the chair.
Go to
So
the
if anybody
chair,
wants to.
Okay, so. Yeah, so if there's any items, and this has to be published, I believe, 24 hours ahead of time, right? So the week before. So don't wait till Thursday to let me know, but let me know as soon as your coalesces into a agenda item, and I'll pass it on to her, and so she can start skeleting that out on the form.
Go ahead. I just wanted to again say how happy and pleased I am with how the city has stepped up to this. And just, I commend everyone involved, Ron and Joe all the rest of them, Public Works, everyone that has done 10 years' worth of improvements out at that airport in about 3 or 4 months. So thank you again. I just can't stop saying it, but thank you. It's marvelous to see the city take proud ownership of that airport.
I'd call that a motion, but I don't think that it's on the agenda. So
That was just a public service announcement. Okay.
but I think there's, the feeling is all along the dais up here. Anything else? Any of the commissioners?
Are we talking about items still?
Say again?
Suggested items for the agenda for the next meeting? We're discussing still?
If you want to let me know,
Okay.
let's do this after the meeting.
That's fine.
And then we'll get it on for the next meeting. But just let me know anytime, in the next 3 weeks if you can, so it don't hurt too much.
Because I have some.
That's it? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, aye.
Really
Gentlemen, the lunch is right by the
Yeah.
door. Please help yourself.